welcome to Meet Our Ex Success Stories podcast. I'm coach and host Amanda Leah, and today I'm here with a former standout American football player for Colgate University, whose NFL career was cut short by injuries. Now, as the owner of the Recovery Lounge, his goal is to help people heal and feel healthy. We're so thrilled to hear your story. Thanks so much for joining us, Matt Spack.
Oh, Amanda, thank you guys for having me on. I appreciate you guys and Dr. Sean Baker. So I'm excited to help out in any way that I can.
That's amazing. So let's get started. Please tell us about your diet and your health before you began the way you currently eat.
Yeah, so I would say probably typical to most. I was on the standard American diet with high protein involved in that. So as a college football player trying to put on weight, I was eating everything in sight. And my idea of getting big was, how many cheeseburgers I could eat at McDonald's or how much milkshakes. And, believe it or not, I was a small guy in my house. So I was with the linemen and they were trying to put on pounds. And so I followed suit. And, it's one of those things when you're young, you just don't know what you don't know. So that was my style of eating. I knew that protein was important, but didn't realize the sugars and the carbs and everything else that went into that. It was like, the more you eat, the bigger you get, the stronger you get. Let's do that.
That's so true. That's so great. So you knew all about protein, and what was your health like while you were eating protein, but also with all of that other carb, sugar stuff?
So it's a good question. So honestly, when you're a teenager, it probably doesn't impact you as much, right? Your testosterone is so high. You don't really think about the spikes you have. You think that, hey, I'm practicing football, plus I'm going to school. I'm spending 6 to 7 hours a day. Tired is just because I'm doing all that stuff, right? I would honestly say I didn't really notice that impact until after football was done for me. And I was quote unquote in the normal life, right? Because I was eating the same way and I was lifting, and I found myself just being tired and lethargic, typical to most at 2:30 in the afternoon, right? And that becomes unfortunately acceptable. Like, oh, it's just a 2:30 downtime, the drag time. Everyone is tired at 2:30. Or I would begin to have almost like what we call now carb comas. That wasn't quite the terminology back in the day, right? It was so lethargic when I would eat like that I couldn't keep my eyes open, and I would take these 10-minute naps or 20-minute naps or whatever else. And that's when I really started to notice it. Like, depending on how much sugar I would eat, we go to like birthday parties or whatever it was, and we'd load up on cakes and sugar and cookies. And I'll be honest, I loved sweets. That was like my thing. I was never like the salty French fry guy. It was more like, if there's a bag of Oreos, why is there 2 bags for me? So so that's when I really started to notice it. It's probably when I was like 22, 23, going to 24. And that's where I started to say, okay, I really need to look at, what are some options here?
Yeah, that makes sense. It's really crazy how intensely our eating habits can affect us without us even realizing that we're in a carb coma, for example.
Absolutely.
So true. So please share now more about your current way of eating. How did you come to it? How do you implement it?
Yeah, so you want to know what? In between that, it wasn't like a cold turkey, like, hey, I'm just going to go into, I'm probably 95% carnivore now, but I really want to take a step back because that's the transitional period for me, I think, is where so many people get stuck. That's where I got stuck, and I learned a lot. And it's kind of like what you hear now, right? It's not about the end result. It's really about the journey. And it couldn't be further. I mean, it's the truth. So I went vegan, believe it or not. I tried it. Didn't last very long. I did it just so I could talk about it, even though I'm an N of 1, right? I want to see what would work for me. I set myself up to do 6 months vegan, 6 months vegetarian, and then 6 months keto. I lasted about 3 months vegan. I just couldn't do it. It just didn't taste good to me. I had no energy. My sex drive wasn't good. It was just a long list of bad stuff. It was very similar to vegetarian. I couldn't eat that much food throughout the day. So I then started doing ketogenic. So my first son was born, and at the time I was working still corporate world, and I was starting a business and had my son. I was working like 80 hours a week, plus starting businesses, and I didn't want to be tired. So I constantly found myself taking in more caffeine, probably because I was eating. So that's when I really learned about keto. So keto actually worked really well for me. If I wasn't training, if that makes sense. So I would say if I'm just a normal person trying to lose weight, I know I work with a lot of people who are diabetic now, type 2 diabetes, or people who are obese. Ketogenic works phenomenal for them because they have to lose the visceral fat. They just have to lose weight. Phenomenal. That worked very well for me. I wasn't ever really heavy, but I lost about 10 pounds, lost it in my face, so I looked younger. People made compliments. I'm like, wow, this is great. It feels good. The problem for me, though, was performance. So my performance took a big hit. At that time, I started competing in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, MMA fighting, and boxing. And my performance was just, to be honest with you, down. I couldn't last. My longevity was terrible. And I'm like, man, what's going on here? So what I found was I started to go back to carbs a little bit, but then I was tired, right? So I'm like, okay, let me increase my protein. So I wasn't technically in keto anymore, right? So as I increased my protein, I felt better. And I'm like, what's going on here? So I was still having a little bit of carbs post-workout, mostly fats. But it was hard because for keto, I was that guy, right? When I do something, I go all in. So I bought the ketogenic cookbooks, and I'm making these fancy desserts that are keto and avocado and this and that and a million things. And it was expensive. And my grocery list was crazy when I was buying stuff. So I found for me, my common denominator was the protein. And where was I getting my protein and how much? And I hunt, so I have a lot of venison, and I buy a lot of in bulk, so I'll buy a half a cow at a time or a cow. As I increase my protein, everything managed to work better. And my one last ditch effort was I started a carb cycle, which essentially was, I was on this hybrid, I'll call it keto, right? So I was going pretty much, break up there, sorry. I was going pretty much ketogenic and, excuse me, sorry, here. Can you see that? I'm going pretty much ketogenic, but when I was carb cycling or adding carbs, I was really tired. So I'm like, what's going on here? I thought that I had to have my carbohydrates. And I was doing like carb backloading. So all my carbs at night. Every 3 days I was doing carbs. And I'm like, well, what if I just try doing no carbs and up my protein? Just kind of play around with my diet. I started adding just a ton of protein, really essentially no carbs at all. And I felt amazing. And my performance went up. My sleep got better. Pretty much everything got better. The biggest thing for me, mental clarity and not having that fall off at like 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I have 3 young kids, businesses. So for me, making that transition period, it wasn't overnight. So I don't want to say, hey, I just stopped eating everything, started eating steak, and everything is great. I understand. I understand there's a transition period. We're all at different places. That was my progression, which has gotten to me where I am now. And the reality is, too, I still have some cheats here and there. I have 3 young kids. That's just part of it. But I look at food differently. When I see stuff, it's not like, oh, I want those Oreos or pizza or cake. I know what it is. And sometimes I'll have it just to have it. Like I make myself eat it just because I'm like, let's see how my body responds to this. And because I'm probably 95 to 98% carnivore, it doesn't bother me too much. But even when I do it, I try to time it around a workout. But that's been my progression. And once I got to a pretty much full carnivore, it just works better for me. It works better for my life, my family. Honestly, it's easy to shop for, right? I'm only buying pretty much one thing at different cuts. But again, I'm fortunate. I know that everybody can't hunt. I know that everybody can't maybe afford to buy a full cow up front. But when you break it down just to regular ground beef and steak cuts, it just, for me, it works. It's been a true success. If I had it over again when I was competing and playing football, I would have loved to eaten like this and see what how my performance would have been.
I bet. That's amazing. It sounds like you've had so much positive impact already from how you were eating. Tell us more about that though. So you buy the cow, but are you only eating beef, or what other meats are you eating? And what is that other 5 or 2% that, apart from those cheats that you force once in a while? Like, do you drink coffee, or do you, where do you stand on fat, organs? I want to hear it all.
Yeah, no, not a problem. Yeah, so for me, I buy in bulk because I get it for about $3 a pound. So when you buy in bulk, and that's everything, all cuts, liver, hearts, and all that. And there isn't enough information. I think there's probably something to game meat, number one, right? I think there's something to that. Probably grass-fed versus non-grass-fed. Maybe it's minute, maybe not. But for me, it just works because I can swing it, I can make that happen. And at $3 a pound, you can't beat it when I have 1,000 pounds of beef or 500 pounds of beef, right? And I try to eat everything, but with the liver and hearts, I'll mix it in my dog food. We have a puppy too, so we'll do that. We mix it in our burger meat, so when we do tacos for the kids, and maybe I just eat it, you can't really taste it. And the other stuff, I eat fish, right? I have a lot of salmon, tuna. I eat eggs. And then even some of the stuff that maybe isn't the healthiest, like bacon, right? You might have your nitrates and nitrites, but I eat bacon, I eat sausage. Sometimes, I'll even have dairy doesn't bother me as much, so I do like the cheese and pepperoni. And now it's kind of like really seeing if I want to add something into my diet, how it affects me. I'll just add something at random to see how maybe this berry, a blackberry, blueberry, or whatever else, seasonally too, right? Especially up in upstate New York, we have very short seasons. So I'm kind of at that point now because I've been carnivore, probably 2 years. I started keto in 2011. So I've been a hybrid of keto since then, and carnivore the last couple of years. And always, even like I said, even during keto is more of a hybrid. I was always higher on the protein. So a lot of times, if I was in keto, it was more exercise induced. Walking around, I probably wasn't in keto. So that's why I call it a hybrid, because my protein was always very high. So, but yeah, I don't shy away from my fish, especially salmon. For example, we're taking my kids on a salmon fish up here. We're going to get about 200 pounds of salmon, which is great, And then tuna as well. Our local farms or our butchers will carry organic, the tuna and the salmon, Atlantic caught. So it's good. We try to help out local as well, supporting local. And outside, so you go back to your point, my cheats, the two things that I lean on all the time are either pizza or sushi, right? I have 3 young kids, so my volume is way down. So to in an effort, I I don't impress myself with how much I eat now compared to what I used to. Back in the day, I'd eat a whole pizza. Now it's like a couple slices, and I'm like, ugh, kind of full. Sushi I still enjoy, but most of the time if I do sushi, it's post-workout. Obviously a lot of fish, little light on the rice. I'm eating mostly sashimi, but I get a lot of rolls. So some people are like, oh man, that's not a real cheat meal. But again, for me as a carnivore, I'm getting the rice in. And the reality is, for someone like myself, someone like Sean, if Sean wanted to go have sushi right now, post-workout, it's going to have very little impact to him at all. His blood glucose, his body's going to absorb it. He's going to utilize it. It's going to go to all the areas. And that's what happens to me. Like I was on the podcast earlier, on average, I burn about 3,500 calories a day. I walk 5 to 7 miles a day just through natural work. I'm boxing, burning 1,000 calories during a session. I'm working out. And that's low end. Sometimes I'm burning 4,000 or more. So it's not going to affect me that much if I go have, a few rolls of sushi.
Yeah,
Hopefully that helps
absolutely.
out.
Yeah, no, sushi's my cheat too, actually,
Oh,
because
cool.
you get all that good fish, you get all that good fat, and a little bit of carbs if you do some rolls, a
Right,
little bit of
absolutely.
avocado. So you were always high protein. Are you where do you stand in fat now? Are you big into
That's a
the
good,
fat intake or mixing it with your
yeah,
protein?
that's a good question. So for me personally, um, the macronutrients, I don't count macros. Most of my cuts are fatty through meat. However, I do get a lot of venison in game meat. So I eat a lot of eggs. So my kids like eggs. I cook in the bacon grease. We get a lot of fat through that. and I cook in olive oil. Now, I know there's some new studies coming out saying olive oil might not be the best, and there's coconut oil, and there's a lot of different stuff going on. Again, I go on how I feel. With coconut oil or olive oil, it doesn't impact how I feel. So I get a lot of my fats through that, through the bacon. But we eat eggs pretty much every day. Most of my cuts are ribeyes, especially when I train. When I was starting to lean out a little bit, I went more strip steaks or Denver cuts or leaner cuts, or when I'm heavy in the venison. So later in our season here, come September, we can hunt, and we'll pull some more venison meat, and I'll start to add in, even more eggs and fat like that. Or what I'll do is have my venison, and I won't eat as much meat, but I'll add salmon to it, so I'm getting my fat through there.
That's great. And in terms of, I don't know, do you supplement at all? Do you use coffee? How do you deal with electrolytes?
Good question. Good question. So yeah, so you want to know what? I'm one of those weird don't drink coffee people, believe it or not. Um, I'm like a green tea guy. So fortunately, that's been the one benefit I would say. I used to take in a lot of caffeine previous to eating like this. I just don't need it as much now, which is great, right? I think there's a time and place for it. I still take some caffeine mixed with my amino acids, but I do, and I know Sean himself is big on supplementation. I would say for me, and maybe it's location specific, right? Though my backyard looks beautiful now, we don't get this much sun in New York all the time. So I supplement with vitamin D, and sometimes seasonally with fish oil, omega-3s, fatty acid. But vitamin D, and so this is a crazy stat. In New York State, 98.6% of people are vitamin D deficient. We get sun June, July, and August, but Syracuse is the cloudiest city in the United States. So yeah, it's tough here. So I supplement, and I'll do 4,000 IUs a day right now. In the fall, I do 6,000, and during our winter months like December, January, February, March, I go to 8,000, and then I'll start to dose reduce from there. But to amino acids, 100% I supplement with them. For me, maybe it's my body, maybe it's how much I'm burning or how I'm training. But when I do the HIIT style training, I get muscle cramps, lower back, shoulders a lot when I'm boxing. So I usually do pre-workout, during workout, and post-workout with an amino acid drink. I try not to add anything into it, just a straight amino blend. You know, probably potassium is the big one for me, vitamin B12, which I get a lot through meat. But the electrolytes, for me personally, it's a night and day difference. And to go a little bit deeper, the electrolytes seem to help me through carnivore. I find myself fasting a lot, intermittent fasting, just by nature. So, for example, today I haven't eaten yet today. It's going to be about 2 o'clock. It's going to be about 2:30 Eastern time before I have a meal, and I feel great. I feel fine. I feel amazing actually. But I had some amino acids because I've put in today so far about 7 miles. But I've had some aminos, and that's kind of how I do it. My vitamin D3, and I've had my amino blend. That way, my body's staying hydrated. I think that a lot of people start to get stuff like edema. They start to get restless leg, and there's a host of other stuff that Sean has probably mentioned before with just being dehydrated. Muscle cramps are a big one. Just not being hydrated enough for the average person, let alone working out, let alone doing HIIT training, let alone really pushing your body. And I'm one of these people who really pushes it to the limits. Like I said, I'm walking 6, 7, 8 miles a day. I'm boxing. I'm up early in the morning. I'm lifting heavy weights. I'm one of those type of people. So if I'm not hydrated, it's going to impact my sleep. It's going to impact my hormones. It's going to impact my testosterone and impact my performance. And if I can just do an amino acid blend that works, it's a no-brainer.
That's super. What a thorough answer. And that's great. Actually, I was going to ask you a little bit about fasting too. So thank you for bringing that up. It's really
Yeah,
great.
absolutely.
Yeah. And that vitamin D, I'm in Toronto, so I hear you. We're the same situation. We're in the exact same situation. It's pretty bad. Today's rainy, or else I might be outside myself.
Yeah.
But yeah, so just before we get on to my last question for you, I'm curious to know, have you had, since you adapted to your 95-98% carnivore, have you had any other difficulties? Have you found?
No, you want to know what? If the only thing that I have found is that it's through probably me not eating enough food that day through meat. if I'm tired or hard training sessions, it's the preparation as if you're eating any other diet, right? You have to have the right amount of nutrients, the right amount of fuel, and everyone's individual. So it's hard to blanket. I think the things that you can blanket for everybody is probably like refined sugar, right? Like sugar in general. If you have someone who's on the standard American diet, you say, hey, listen, stop drinking soda. They're going to feel better. They're going to lose weight. It's what it is. Stop taking in sugar. Okay. Stop smoking. Stop that one thing. Right. And as you train, you have to have more fuel. For me, it's a meat source now. Okay. So if I'm not having enough of the fats in or enough of the protein, I may feel lethargic or my recovery might not be the best. So other than that, I've got to be honest with you, and I have no stake in the game, right? I mean, no pun intended, I have no stake, but I don't get paid by anybody for any supplementations, and I did that on purpose. I've had supplement companies reach out to me. I've had different organizations reach out to me to pay me to work on their sides. And I don't get paid by any, any butcher, any supplement company, any of that stuff. So I want to know what works best for me for the highest performance to maximize my personal performance for as long as I'm on the planet, right? So, and that's through me so far for me. I haven't had anything that's bad. My sleep has gone up, my energy's gone up, my performance has maintained the same. I feel great. I'm about 248 pounds at 10% body fat. So, which is pretty good. I could be more lean, but I'm not trying to be a bodybuilder. I want performance. So I know Sean's on his super lean, which he looks phenomenal right now. But I'm still eating a lot of ribeyes and a lot of fat. If I wanted to cut that out, I could probably be at 8% in no time. Um, it's just everything feels good. The biggest thing for me is the inflammation. So I've had years and years of football, and I've always had aches and pains. And to say 100% of everything has been eliminated, and that's never going to happen, right? But the things that were eliminated were like my neck and joint pain, some shoulder pains that were probably related to carbohydrates in excess. I don't have a lot of those anymore, which is allowing me to train more and more often. So just overall inflammation. I mean, once you can eliminate the sugar and whatever is causing inflammation in your body. And some people can get away with eating, blackberries. I work with tons of people that can have, hey Matt, this, broccoli doesn't impact me, but kale does. Or hey, I can eat a blackberry, but not a raspberry. I can eat a blueberry, but I can't eat a blackberry. Once you can get to that point, and it's kind of where I am, where I'm throwing different stuff in just to see what impacts me. It's a really good spot to be in. Um, the, because it can eliminate your inflammation. I can tell you the biggest thing for me, right? And it's nothing to do with muscle related, but sinusitis. When I eat a lot of carbohydrates, the one area I get is right here. I become very nasally. And a lot of people take that for granted, especially up here and probably in your area, right? This time of year for allergies. That's a big upstate New York thing. It's a big thing in Canada, big thing in Montreal, big thing in Toronto, like all up northeast. And when I started doing this 2 years ago, I'm like, I don't have allergies anymore. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, maybe it wasn't allergies. You know what I mean? Um, so that to me, that was awesome. It was one of these things where it went away, and I'm like, no way. So what I do, I had a huge carbohydrate meal. Sure enough, I'm like, man, trouble with the breathing. So that impacts performance, how much oxygen you're getting to your brain, right? So, and I've had a lot of fights, and by nature, I do have a little bit of a deviated septum, so that doesn't help. But my breathing has been the biggest thing that I notice. Again, the little things from the muscle aches. Again, I can't lie, I've had years of football, so I'm going to have aches and pains and stuff like that. But the sinusitis has been the number one thing. If I could, pinpoint one thing that I can eat carbohydrates and it impacts me directly, sinusitis.
Wow, that's huge. That's really huge. And that is also for me one of the best parts about it.
Oh,
I undoubtedly, I was shocked. I was certain that I didn't realize how much I used Kleenex until I
oh
stopped
yeah,
using Kleenex. I was like, what's going on? Yeah, totally
yeah.
true. Actually, you did such a great job of answering my last question without me asking it, talking about your health overall now and how your life has improved. We didn't
Mhm,
hear, I'd love to hear, I always hear about hormones, our sex drive,
mhm.
and dental, and you
Yep.
talked about sleep. And is there anything else you want to add that was beneficial before we kind of end our conversation?
Yeah, The biggest thing is your quality of life, right? There's so much stress going on in life. So let's remove COVID-19, and I know it's a whole nother conversation, right? But that's a big stress. And there's just the common stuff of work, of relationships, kids, children. We have a lot of stress in general, and a lot of times people will stress eat, right? And they don't realize that comfort food, it's a moment of pleasure, and that it's causing them inflammation, and they're looking for ways to alleviate that inflammation, but they still have their current stress, right? They still have the stress of going to their day job. They still have the stress of just normal stuff, kids and school and work, and now come COVID, and it's been a whirlwind of stuff. For me, at least, this has eliminated some of the stress, with energy throughout the day, and being able to focus better at certain topics at hand, having more mental clarity, and just overall performance. And I really believe that everything's all tied into one, right? When you can feel better, you're going to perform better. When you can perform better, you're going to have positive results. And the biggest thing about having a positive results, or a positive mindset, or a positive sense of belief is everything starts to shift for you a little bit better. So when you start, and it could be the difference of, and I tell this all the time, to people that go to see their physicians, and they get them on some kind of crazy diet, or they tell them to eliminate all this bad stuff and take this insulin and whatever else, and they step on the scale and they haven't lost weight. That mental connection to the scale, it can be devastating, but it also can show you the impact of how powerful our minds are. Because if they lose just 1 pound, a person goes, "Oh my God, I'm doing something right." So your biggest takeaway, or my biggest takeaway to you, is it doesn't happen overnight. If you can stay positive and have a positive impact, it's gonna lend itself to every part of your life, from business to relationships to healthy eating to performance. That's been the biggest thing overall for me, is just feeling better. So again, with multiple businesses and with a family, and I'm extremely busy in general, and I still want to maintain that kind of a quote unquote meathead lifestyle, where I can go push myself to the limits. I can go try crazy stuff in the gym. Similar to Sean, right? Sean gets bored. He's like, hey, I want to break a rowing championship. Hey, I want to go in the CrossFit now. That's kind of like me. With fighting again. Hey, I want to just jump back into a fight. I want to go do this. And it's not many people can do that, but it's allowing me to do that and stay positive.
That's amazing. Oh,
Yep.
so inspirational. It's true. You've clearly laid out how this way of eating can really, really impact your relationship with food, your understanding of how your body responds to food, never mind stress management, and being able to have that mental focus and stay positive. So thank you.
It feels great. Not to interrupt you, I apologize. There's not many things that we can control in this life, and that's one area that you can take control. And taking control.
Oh, you went on mute. Okay. Yeah.
Um,
And taking control.
it makes you feel good. And when you can have that control over something, in that one area of your life, it can just springboard and perpetuate a lot of positivity in your life.
100%. So well said. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us and share your story. It's definitely a success that I'm sure will inspire many. So thank you so much. Have a great day, Matt Spack.
You too. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate you guys having me on.
Bye.
Bye. Have a good one.